Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us today for our Streamlining Management of Your Office Environment with Facility Service Management. I'm David Pickering. I work in the technical marketing team for Avanti, and I'm going to run you through this session today, which includes a demonstration of the Avanti Neurons for Facility Service Management solution. So let's get started. So the first thing I wanted to do was just ask a little question of you, understand where you're at within your organization. So if we can just sort of go through and look at answering this particular question. And it's a fairly simple one. It's multiple answers, so you can have one or more of these options. Does your organization provide any of the following? Reservation management, so if you want to reserve a cubicle or a meeting room or anything like that. Do you have a portal of some variety to log facilities issues? So can you, if you're in a meeting room, say, hey, the air conditioning's not working. Are you able to order or manage non-IT assets like chairs, desks, lights, etc.? And can you do any research around facilities knowledge articles? So if you could sort of just think about that for a little bit, I'd love to know within your organization what you have. A lot of these things companies don't have, or they might have one of. So I'd be very interested to find out what your organization's doing within your environment. And we'll just give that a little bit of time to see that. There's one question that's just popped in. Are these generally applicable to any type of facilities? For example, could this work for a remote site? Yes, absolutely. We're not restricting it to an office environment. It could be a manufacturing floor, it could be a hospital floor, it could be any facility. So let's go and have a look at the results of this and see what people have from that point of view. So within our answers, 66.7% say they have some sort of portal to log facilities issues. Well, that's great. I think a lot of organizations tend to miss that from that point. You have to send an email to the facilities manager or something like that. And reservation management. And it's an interesting one. If I was asked this question maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I suspect most organizations wouldn't have had too much of a reservation management solution. And we'll talk about why that started to change in the way we work, as well as a lot of the other facilities aspects that we look at in our day-to-day work now. The facilities management has changed so much over the last few years. Pre-pandemic, pre-lockdowns, we were always going into the office. There was a certain aspect of running a facility. It's quite changed quite a lot now that we've moved away from being in the office all the time. And what does that mean? So what we're talking about and what we've found from our data is managing space and improving that employee experience in a hybrid workspace in particular has changed drastically. It's really changed completely. Now, looking at things like seat reservation systems, before you might have had a dedicated desk within an office environment. Whereas now, if you're working hybrid coming in 2 days a week, you might need to pre-book a cubicle or an office or a desk environment setup. Space utilization has changed as well. Not having everyone in the office means that space utilization, they might have reduced the space that they're using, but they're using it more efficiently. So rather than having an entire floor allocated, which might have had potentially a quarter of the space empty, they may be getting a much higher adoption of that space, but managing it more efficiently through reservation systems, etc. Now, it's really changed the way facilities teams have to manage their locations and their space, and there's a whole lot extra on top of that. When you think about managing a facility space, and you start to factor in other things, like maybe there has to be a sanitization process occur every week. So do you want people in the office at that point? You might want to shut down the office at that particular period of time. What else do you need to do? So it really changed how you manage a facility. And then as part of that, we talked about booking desks or reservation systems, that ability to do room scheduling technology. It's really changed, it's really skyrocketed. And there's a much higher adoption of that ability to schedule a room or a cubicle or a space. It could be a open space, like an atrium or a canteen, to be able to have everyone together for a period of time. So I've seen that really change quite drastically. Meeting rooms has always been fairly common. You can do that through Microsoft Outlook and Exchange or Gmail, but adapting that further out to that entire office space has really quite changed a lot. Now that we've got that hybrid approach, we're having to manage the space a lot more. And then how we're working is drastically changed as well. The majority of people are doing some sort of hybrid shared seating arrangement. So they don't have a dedicated desk in that office environment. So how do we go about managing that shared seating, or how do we go about managing that particular shared environment? So again, coming into that reservation system, that ability to be able to book a room, book a seat, book some sort of space where I can come in and work for that day or 2 days a week, and then we move on to the next phase of what we're doing. And then, as we know, hybrid work is here to stay. Different organisations are treating that differently. Some might say, look, we want you in 50% of the time. Some will say it's completely flexible, turn up to the office when you want. And others have been a bit more strict and saying, we want you in on a more regular basis. But what has happened is changed the way we work, where we work from, has changed quite dramatically. And with Avanti, we've seen that across the board. So if we look at any of our analysis of the employee experience or the work from anywhere, we've seen a lot of organisations still saying, look, you can work from home the majority of the time, but every so often you'll need to come into the office. And I've already done that. So for next week, I'm in Colorado Springs. I've already booked a cubicle into Colorado Springs. So I've got a space allocated for me for that week, but I work from home the rest of the time. And then facilities is really the core of that business continuity. And what do we mean by that? We've got an office space. If it shuts down for some reason, how do we manage that? If we have to do cleaning or some sort of maintenance on it, we want to be able to shut down a facility potentially, or just a floor of that facility, or even just a location potentially. Have that unavailable to be used and reserved. Do what we need to do do the maintenance. Preventative maintenance is core to that. How do we make sure we've always got preventative maintenance occurring? Maybe it's monthly cleaning of the cooling towers, having a self-service portal where people can maybe make a request for a reservation of a room or have an issue of some sort and log that. Maintaining buildings, locations, floors, sites has always been a part of space management for facilities, but now it's a core capability because they're managing the space much tighter and much differently to what we used to. And then you've got all the other aspects of that: fire safety, security, electrical. Tracking the assets is another key component. When I look back at the start of what would happen in COVID, when Teams was told, you've got to go home now, or closing down, there's lockdown occurring, people were walking out the door with desks and chairs and monitors, or not desks, but chairs, monitors, all sorts of things from the office, and no one knew where they went. They knew that employees had taken them, but where did they go? So tracking assets now has become much more controlled and understood from a facility side, as well as on an IT side. So it's really asset management across an organisation has become key from certainly understanding what's going on, but also understanding the costs and where things are. And that's where Avanti Neurons for Facilities is the key player in this. So built upon the Avanti Neurons ITSM platform, we've extended the service management best practices into the Avanti Neurons for Facilities solution. And it gives you a lot of capabilities that we've talked about. And what we're talking about here is having a full work order management solution. So support the full life cycle work orders from a request, it could be from a user or a team, to getting that assigned and having that work through that end-to-end process. So it's not just an email and gets lost in the facilities inbox, it's something that's managed entirely through the process. Having a knowledge base where you just have facilities knowledge articles. So we're not having knowledge articles that are mixed with IT articles. You have unique ones that talk about facilities. Now, if I want to find out about fire extinguishers or fire drill, that's a facilities requirement. They should be documenting and having that available. So having those common questions, policies, protocols, and procedures, all documented and available. And having that employee self-service, whether it's via the desktop or a mobile phone, having the ability to make a reservation, request an asset, go through the process of submitting a request and understanding what the status is. And then, as we talked about, that facilities asset management side is a core component of it now. What are the assets do I have? Where are they located? And manage it from a procurement through to disposal and have clear visibility of all the assets, and even more importantly, across all the locations. And another key component of that facilities asset management is most facilities organisations will have some sort of stock room, and it might be in certain buildings. So understanding what do we have within that stock room? Do I have something that I can just quickly go and replace light bulbs from a simplistic viewpoint? Or do I need to go and order something? So understanding what do I have and how do I go about managing my assets across all my locations. So we're going to jump into a demonstration now and look at what facility service management looks like. And I'll look at it from a few different areas. We're going to look at it from the self-service. So let's see what facility service management out of the box looks like for self-service. Look at a reservation and reserving a cubicle. We're going to work through a work order and work request and a facilities request. Now we're going to touch on assets, locations, and buildings to give you a quick view of what do we offer within facility service management and give you an idea of what we can do within the solution. And here we are now within facility service management. So this is the self-service portal. So within the Vanti Neurons for ITSM, we have the ability to have an enterprise landing page, which will present to you all the different areas of that solution. So I can go into IT services, HR services, facility services. And in this particular case, we're going to land and start within facility services. And what we want to look at is what are the different things within that? So one of the first things is facilities often wants to have announcements about what's happening within your organisation. It could be because in this case, we're going to go out and fumigate all the US offices. But it could be a lot of other things, the return to office, are there other things happening from a closure side of things? Maybe there's a particular shutdown coming up within the near future. So having announcements and alerts available on a self-service portal, and you could distribute that via email or any other method. And then having knowledge articles that are going to present unique information around facilities, and we'll look at that in a minute. Understanding where your existing requests are, what the status is, what are they waiting on, are they approved, etc. And then we can go through the process of raising a request or creating a work order. We'll do that in a minute. But what we're going to do is start by, I just want to understand, about fire drills within the organisation. What are they? So we have an announcement, and it will come back with a list of different things. So it could be an announcement, it could be a knowledge article, it could even be a request. So if you did have a particular request, it could come back. So it will give you all the information or categories of what you searched against that match that particular search engine, search requirement. I mean, see, we've got, fire drill, it's about to occur, but we also have our knowledge article in there, which gives me information about what are the steps we need to go through for our fire drill procedures. So I can look at that and look at what we're doing. And I can go and browse any of the knowledge articles and just look at my knowledge base, and I can have a look at what are the unique facilities knowledge articles that I have. So this will just give me everything that facilities are created from a knowledge article view. And you could categorize that. So if you did just want something unique to a building through our role-based security, we can narrow that down and say this is only based for this location, for example. So if, as a global organization, you might say, the US have different facilities knowledge articles versus something that might be in the UK. So now let's go back and look at that and say, I'm going to create a work order. So I'm just going through the process. So we're going to create a work order and found out we don't have fire extinguisher. what that will come back with is a whole list of knowledge articles. So the concept here, in the same way it might be from the way we use our service management solutions, is I want to present back the knowledge articles. So they might be able to fix this without actually logging a work order. In this case, I can look at, okay, what does a fire extinguisher look like? What's the information about that? Does it have hyperlinks out to external things? So that might be something that I could say, okay, that answers my question. In this particular case, it's not, because we actually don't have a fire extinguisher in a particular location. I'm going to create a work order to say we don't have a fire extinguisher. And as we talked about, location, building, floor, very important to this. We just said generically we don't have a fire extinguisher. Well, that doesn't really help me or narrow down what we want it to. So what we're going to come to is we're going to choose the location. In this case, we're in Chicago. It's our main building. And we're going to put it on the corporate floor. And then whereabouts is that? So it's a conference room. Then we have a choice to then choose a particular conference room. So in this case, we'll say the Golden Flower conference room. So that's said, we don't have a fire extinguisher there in this particular location. I'm going to set it as a priority too, because it's pretty important to have fire extinguishers within certain areas. And I'm saving that to execute. And we're now we've requested that. And I can go and look at that created request. So I can look at that to see where are we, what's the status, do I want to add some comments to that? Anything that, we want to keep the status or track the status of that particular request, so we can put in some additional notes. I could add notes to that, save it, etc. So that's the first phase of me going through something. Now what we want to do is go to the service catalog, and maybe I want to book a facilities room. Now the service catalog you define from your facilities team as to what sort of request might there be. So maybe you've noticed an elevator needs servicing, or one of the team needs that. It could be a facilities asset request. So if I wanted to order a new chair, I could come in here. So I want a new chair, and then I can choose the type of chair that I want. So I can come through, do that, and put a request in. So having a catalogue of items that I can request. In this case, we're going to do a facilities reservation request because I want to book a cubicle for coming into the room. So start with, where am I going? Where is it? Again, we're going into the Chicago office, main building, and we'll do it corporate offices. And I'm going to choose Monday next week, and what time do I want that from? Then what sort of room do I want? So this is where I can book a conference room, a cubicle, or an office space. Now, what you can order is different depending on what you say. So if I just want a cubicle, I'll just say what room or cubicle do I want. If I say it's a conference room, I then get different options within that to say how many people are attending, what sort of room space is it, how do I want that configured? So I can say I want it theatre style. Do I want catering? So if I check that box, I can then have options for catering. What equipment do I want? So it will vary based on the type of room that we're trying to book. As I said, in this case, we just want a cubicle, and I'll book that particular cubicle. And then I can submit that. And again, that will go in as my request, and I can see that request at a later point. So that will go through an approval process, potentially depending on your workflow. More likely to be the office manager would approve that to say, yeah, that's good, come on into the office. So what we've done is done a knowledge article search. We've looked at the facilities work order, so we've created something about our fire extinguisher not existing. And we also want to book a room. So what does that look like for the facilities team and the people who are going to action those requests? So we're going to go across to my facilities manager role. And we're going to look at what that information looks like. So now we're coming into the facilities manager. And there's different dashboards we have per role. In this case, I've got all the dashboards available to me. As a facilities manager, I can see what the work orders are by status. I can see what's active, what's in progress, what's logged, what locations we have available, cubicles. So that's good information for me. Any room reservations, any scheduled shutdowns, and we can see there are a couple that are coming up so we know what's happening. And then the facilities request by facilities type. So what sort of requests have we had? And as I mentioned, we have different dashboards. So an analyst or a technician would have a slightly different dashboard because they're really just looking at what's my work for the day? What do I need to do? Or I can look at it from my facilities asset person, and we have that again looking at what assets do I have in stock. So I can see what we have, where our facilities assets are by location. So I can see what we have within a particular location, any active work orders status, and then down to my manager role, which is going to look at my team and what we're working on, etc. And we can look at what's happening by location. How many requests are we getting? So we might have a particular locations that are more concerned than other locations. So let's look at our work order we created for our fire hydrant, fire extinguisher. So this is the one we just logged. We logged that today. I'm going to jump into that. I'm going to have a look at that particular request. Now what we'll see here is we have all the information around who requested it, what the information was, where the location is, the priority, and we've categorized that. And the categorizations are based on how you want to categorize that. So it could be by building management, energy, landscaping, operations, and then you'll have subcategories and then different work order types. And we'll look at one of these others, which is scheduled maintenance, in a little while to talk about that preventative maintenance side of what we're working on. And then we have other information. So what other information might we have? So we can add tasks. We can make this a confidential facilities request. So if for some reason we don't want too many other people working on this, we could tag that as confidential and add particular individuals who can look at that request. So we don't have to have that open to all the facilities team. So we're working through this. We don't have a fire extinguisher. So one of the first things we might want to go and do is say, okay, do we have any assets available that I might want to work on? So I can come into my facilities asset and go, do we have any in the stock room? Let's go and have a look. So what I'm going to do is bring up the facilities assets. I'm going to do a search to see what's in stock and where might those assets be. I'm just going to do a quick search on the status. I want to look at in stock. And do a search, and we can start to see, okay, we've got some equipment. Is that equipment the right stuff? It's based in Chicago, so that's great. We've got a fire extinguisher in stock in Chicago. Let's select that. And we could then say, right, as part of that work process, we can go and take that out of the stock room, for example. And we'll go through that process in a little bit. But let's say we didn't have a asset that we could go and work against. So we needed to go and order that asset. Well, let's go and order a whole lot of assets. What we can do then is go to our facilities requests. And we could go and create a new request for that fire extinguishers and get them put into the stock room. I come into here. Put in myself. And we're going to go and bring that up. It's a facilities asset request. It's safety equipment. We might actually decide we're going to order 5 of those because it would make sense to sort of have a few more that we can have in the stock room. I'm going to put high priority, high urgency on that particular request because we don't have enough fire extinguishers, and that's a concern to us. So we've gone through and added that within the process. Now what's going to happen is it will go through an approval stage, so we need someone to approve that. I'm just going to override that as the approver. And the workflow then will have a particular workflow. And these are configurable, these workflows, but out of the box, what we're looking at from a workflow side of things. Is we'll come in, potentially we'll need an approver by the product catalog. In this case, we don't have that. We'll just go straight to a manager for approval. And then we go and say, okay, do we have any facilities in our asset inventory? So it will look at the location of the requester and say, do we have anything that's within the location that that person's asking? And then we'll go through. If they do, then we can go through the process of allocating it. If we don't have an asset that's available, we can then go through a procurement process. And this is similar to the IT asset management approval process, where we can say, okay, we want to create a purchase order. I can come into here and say, look, I'm going to create a new purchase order. We've got one here that's already existing. And within there, we can say, okay, what are the line items that we want? So we're ordering a item, which is our fire extinguisher. We've asked for 5 of those. So we're going to have 5 assets that get created. We can have invoicing, and we're going to have shipments. We don't want to have a lot of time to go through that today. But as we go through that, once that's approved and worked on, we can then come into here, add that as we've just done. We can go into our facilities asset. And then what we can do is we can assign that to this particular location. So I can come into here. Once I've allocated that, I can assign that to the location and the building and the floor. So that then enables me to say, right, let's work all that out. We already know what that in Chicago. And we can put the building, etc. And where do we want that? So that's the way we would go about allocating that and assigning that to a location. And we can change that from in stock to within the room. So that's how we'd go through that process of that end to end. Now we talked about before reservations. So we do have a reservation calendar. So we had that room reservation. If it gets approved, that will appear on our reservation calendar so we can see at any point what reservations are there, what's happening, what are the rooms available, etc. So we can link that into any of those. And then facilities assets are a key factor of that. So when we look at that, it uses the same processes for the IT asset management capabilities. So we break that down by what are the asset types, where are they, how do we manage them, but they're unique to facilities. They're just facilities assets. And then the last piece of that we want to look at is we'll just look at the location, room, etc. So we have the different locations, and I'm going to go and choose Chicago. And then you'll see we start to document, okay, what buildings make up Chicago? So there could be multiple buildings. How many floors are there within there? What are the rooms within that particular location? What cubicles and what spaces do we have? And that's looking at from that entire location. If I drill into a building, we narrow that down a little bit more. And we start to look at, okay, what are the floors within that building? So within the location, within the building. And then if we go to the floor, we can go and look at that a little bit more again. And we can see what are the cubicles we have on that floor. We can have diagrams, floor plans, so everyone's aware of what that looks like, what rooms are there, what spaces, any equipment that might be on that floor that's important, any facilities assets that are on that floor. And this is where we can start to look at, do we have a scheduled shutdown? So if I did want to schedule another shutdown, I can do that. I can put the date, time where we want to do that shutdown. What is the reason behind it? And what that will mean, more importantly, is if someone tries to do a reservation for that scheduled shutdown time, they won't be able to do a reservation. It will be blocked out. They won't be able to book for that period of time. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is just preventative maintenance. And preventative maintenance for this is just about setting up a work order, And I'll put one here for routine maintenance for heating and cooling. And what I've done is said I want scheduled maintenance. Here's my monthly schedule. And then we can come into here and look at my scheduled maintenance time frame. So what is that time frame? So I've gone what my original one was starting date, and I want it done first Sunday of every month. So every month we'll create a sub work order, and that will get created every time we want to have some work, and that will get allocated to the appropriate team for them to be allocated their piece of work. So everyone knows what that work is. They would go through and close this work order out according to how they'd work in the process. So that's the demonstration. I know it's a very short demonstration that we've gone through, but I wanted to sort of do that for you to sort of give you a view of what the facility service management look like. So hopefully it's given you a good view of what's happening and what's available within the Avanti Neurons for facility service management. And what are the core benefits of Avanti Neurons for facilities? You gain visibility into that work across everything within facilities, whether it's scheduled maintenance, whether it's your space, whether it's your assets. Are there particular locations that maybe are having more work done to them than not? So you've got a view of that. Is there anything that's sitting there and not working? Improving productivity for both the employees who are not facilities people, because they can get knowledge articles, they can get information on the self-service portal, but just as importantly for a facilities team, they've got a standardized method of getting requests into them, and maybe there's some that they could deflect that can be answered by a knowledge article. Improving the way we work across work orders, communications, out-of-the-box relationships, and supporting that next phase of work, which is, we're all working from home. We're in hybrid type capabilities. When we want to go into the office, how do we go about doing that? And looking at that floor area, cube space, etc. And with that, I'll just look at what questions we have. So I know there is another question. Does this require the asset management module? I will have to verify that, but I believe when you get facilities asset management, you will get the facilities, Avanti Neurons for the facilities, you get the facilities asset management included in that. But I would want to verify just to make sure that's, you don't need to have previously purchased the Avanti Neurons for IT asset management, but I believe you would get that. All right, so with that, thank you very much for your time today. I hope you've gained something out of that and understand a little bit more about the facility service management solution. And thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.